Welcome to a very special show-up interview with Paula Collins, Democratic candidate for the 21st Congressional District in New York State, running against the current U.S. Representative Elise Stefanik. Hi, Paula.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. Thank you very much for letting me be here.
Well, I am very excited that you're here. I know there's a lot of people anticipating this interview. First and foremost, I just want to take a look at this map here. District 21 is massive.
It is massive.
And I look at this and I think, how in the heck do you get from one side of this district to another on a day-to-day? What does it look like for you?
Well, I have a really good team and a really good organization, and I drive a lot. But I think it is important as much as possible to show up in person. I do some Zoom appearances. I do some telephone work, but generally, if somebody asks me to be there, I show up.
Yeah, and I'm sure they appreciate that. But there's probably a lot of people that are like, where is Paula? Who is Paula? And how are we handling that?
So that came home really strongly this week when I was talking with some people, and they were quite perturbed. You know, where have you been? We've had all of these other things going on. Where is our congressional candidate? So what we have taken to doing is, instead of just messaging what's going on in their town or in their county, we've now taken to posting what's going on in all of New York 21 and in all of my schedules, so that people will know I'm not sitting at home just, lying about.
Right.
I'm actually either en route or actually on site for some other candidate appearance to talk with voters.
And you've really depended on a lot of your, supporters to help you with that. In my understanding, the postcards have been massive. Tell me more about the postcards for those people who don't know.
So here's the story on the postcards. I bought a box of 10,000 postcards with a campaign message. I think I bought it shortly after petitioning ended, so like early May. It took about 8 weeks to find homes for those 10,000. In other words, to find individuals who were willing to send out those 10,000. They were very cautious because I was asking people to send out 120 postcards, and they were intimidated by that. Now, to be fair, many of the postcarding groups that we're hearing about all over the country ask people to send 30. Mm-hmm. So I was asking for a lot more, but I was asking for people to just affix a mailing label and a stamp, and maybe write in when we fight, we win, or some kind of go vote blue or something like that on the message. So I was asking for a lot. But what happened somewhere around 8 weeks is that people said, hey, this is actually really empowering, because I can sit at my kitchen table and I, the individual, can reach out to 120 voters throughout New York 21. So it became a very safe way for people to take ownership of their role in the campaign and their role in this election cycle and feel like they were really making a change. Now, New York 21 is an interesting district in that there has been such a very strong MAGA influence and Republican influence. It's the first time I ever in my life, it happened in Fulton County, somebody used an expression, they were a closet Democrat. And I had never heard that expression before, but it's a very commonly used phrase in many counties in New York. I associate closet with the LGBT movement and people feeling like, oh, I can now come out of the closet. These Democrats felt like they could not come out of the closet as Democrats because they were afraid of retaliation from their neighbors. So get back to the postcards. They could sit at their kitchen table and help with this blue wave that is just taking over the country with joy and with authenticity that we've not heard in several years. And yet they could do it very safely and not feel like they were putting themselves out on the line.
Exactly. It's been amazing, and I'm seeing it and show up. The members are asking for more and more postcards, and I'm sure it's actually become a thing where it's hard to keep up.
It's very hard to keep up lately, and that's on us to catch up. Small dollar donations are very much appreciated, because we were kind of caught flat-footed with it. It suddenly, I'll tell you, like I say, it took 8 weeks to get rid of the first 10,000. Then I think I ordered 30,000, and they went in about 2 weeks. And then I had an order of 40,000 that went in maybe 10 days. And then this last order of 50,000 just went like 2 days, gone.
Yeah.
And so I've got more postcards coming in. We've also found a more streamlined way to order them so that if we do have to fill an emergency order, we've got systems in place. But, so we're providing postage, we're providing the mailing labels, we're providing the cards. And so really it's fun. People are having postcard parties.
Yeah.
A lot of people sat at home during the debate, the debate that happened, and then also during the convention, and they would sit around and they were doing postcards together. So it's a way that people can feel like they're very involved in the campaign. And they are, because guess what? With a district this size, it's nigh impossible for us to knock on every door. I don't think it has ever been done that we've knocked on every door. Unlike some of the districts, say, in the city, where you could conceivably knock on every single door. Here you're going to drive up this long, narrow road, chickens scattering in some places, and knock on a door, and either you're going to get a hostile response or, and maybe you'll get a good response. Like I've had the experience of knocking on doors and people say, wow, let me go get my wife. We haven't seen a Democrat here ever. And so, you never really know. But the postcarding is very safe and very social because people, like I say, people get together for postcarding parties.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to know that you got in the race late, like February.
Well, see, I used to say I got in the race late. I got in the race in February, a couple of days before petitioning started. But, Kamala Harris got in the race after I did.
That's true. Touche. Touche.
And then Tim Walz came in after.
Yes, and
out of the blue.
The most loved, potential VP, I think, that has taken the stage. So yeah, I really want to make the most of your time here today. And so I'm going to just jump right in.
Okay.
So according to one published article by the Congressional Research Service titled, quote, "The Roles and Duties of a Member of Congress," and this was updated February 15th, 2022. The job of a member of Congress has been characterized by one observer as a license to persuade, connive, hatch ideas, propagandize, assail enemies, vote, build coalitions, shepherd legislation, and in general, cut a figure in public affairs. I think that is, could be taken in a couple of different ways. However, I do think in hearing that very influential description, how would you describe how our current congressional representative, Elise Stefanik, has been able to use her role to take advantage of those opportunities just described? And then alternatively, what would be your intent with that same liberty and freedom?
Well, what comes to my mind with that question or with this general topic is statesmanship. And really, while I'm out campaigning and I am expressing my opinions and asking voters to express their opinions by voting for me, once November 5th has come and gone, whomever wins the race is expected to represent all of the voters, even those people who did not vote for them. And so once we're in office, we're expected to act as statesmen and to really carry the best interests of the district, rather than, in my opinion, Elise Stefanik finds opportunities to promote her own career or her own interests within the MAGA party. I don't really call them the Republican Party anymore, but the MAGA party, or the party of Donald Trump, as opposed to really looking out for the interests of the voters in New York 21.
Absolutely. And just to kind of give an example, and I want to read something that I'm sure you're no stranger to, which is the proposal of an amendment of Section 11, Article 1, that would read as the following. Section 11 now protects against unequal treatment based on race, color, creed, and religion. The proposal will amend the act to also protect against unequal treatment based on ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy, and pregnancy outcomes, as well as reproductive health care and autonomy. The amendment allows laws to prevent or undo past discrimination. What's interesting is that when I'm visiting Elise Stefanik's official Facebook page, is what you'll see here, my statement on Proposition 1, and she puts this in quotes. Proposition 1 would give our hard-earned New York taxpayer dollars to illegals, fund sex change operations for minors without parental consent, and force schools to allow men and boys in women and girls sports and bathrooms. Vote no on the radical far-left proposition. And seeing how our current conservative representative of District 21 has taken what I read in quotes directly from the New York State Board of Elections and then interpreted it into her own idea of what that is on a platform that, as of 2 days ago, reached nearly 800 people because they reacted to it. Probably more, actually, because there's, it doesn't show you how many people viewed it, but at least 800 people as of today has reacted to it. What would you say is the problem with this and how she's managed to influence our community members and our voters? And how would you try to be different in that?
Well, when I was a teacher, I used to say to my students, we must learn to read. We must learn to critically analyze. And we must learn to read a passage. As citizens, we're obligated to. That's why we want an educated voter base. We're obligated to read something and then interpret it. And what Elise did there in her response was really expand to hit on hot topics that are hot to her, like immigration, trans rights. Those are topics that are important to her. But, if we look at the opinions of most of the United States of America, most of the people in the United States of America are trending towards wanting an expansion of rights for the LGBT community, an expansion and protection of rights for women, for reproductive rights. And yet the MAGA party, and Elise Stefanik calls herself not only MAGA, but ultra MAGA, they want to go back and even ban contraception. Unbelievable. And you know what Kamala Harris says? We are not going back. Those are very powerful words juxtaposed against Make America Great Again. So Make America Great Again harkens to, well, we had a good thing going and we want to get back to it. And the Democrats are very clearly signaling, we're not going back to 1950 when people of color did not have the same rights, when women couldn't hold jobs or credit cards, when women couldn't even have a bank account. We're not going back to an era in which women couldn't get contraception or a woman could only get an abortion under very dangerous circumstances. And so to have a sitting representative who, by the way, isn't new on the scene. Elise Stefanik was first elected in 2014, and yet she's become so out of touch. It's almost like with every passing year, she's gotten further disconnected from the opinion and the will and the sentiment of the people that she represents. Mm-hmm. That it's really time to right the ship, to turn things around, and to get a representative who really does echo what the people are wanting, which is an expansion of rights and a protection of rights.
Absolutely. I cannot agree more. And then another interesting video, and I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a clip, again, of an interview that she did with the Empire State Weekly. It's on her Facebook page. It's public. You can go on and see it. She does a pretty good interview where she basically calls out Kamala for not debating Donald Trump, saying that Donald Trump is ready anytime, any platform, and that Kamala has refused. It's interesting to me because from my understanding is that you have offered to debate Elise Stefanik. And what has been the response?
Well, it wasn't only my offer. The Times-Union offered to have congressional debates for all 26 of the congressional districts. I RSVP'd and was very interested. We were to have scheduled for September the 26th. It's my understanding from the Times-Union is that the Stefanik campaign simply did not respond. You know, we're close to Canada, we're close to French-speaking Canada, RSVP, respondez-vous, s'il vous plaît. And they simply were quite rude, really. And there's a basic level of decorum that I believe, I mentioned that word statesmanship, decorum. These are things that we're really lacking in today's Congress, or especially amongst those who are members of the MAGA party. If a member of the media, you know, the democracy is built on some really basic things, like we need a free press, we need elected officials, and whether there's a hostile relationship or whether you sometimes get a bad coverage in the press, you do need the press. We need the free press. We've seen what happens when countries don't have a free press. So just as a basic courtesy to the press, just say, are you going to show up September 26th or not? And they've chosen to simply not answer. So the Times-Union did place a deadline for our responses, and so they notified me, and actually I learned about it in their press coverage of this, that the Stefanik campaign has simply not responded.
So, just to be clear, you're ready.
Oh, I'm ready.
Anytime.
I'm very ready.
Any place.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime, any place.
We're ready for that to happen. So, what would be your primary focus for those areas? And you touched on it earlier, that it's important that we address everybody, that your representation is for every voter. How can you address these worries and fears that have been, you'd have to guess, created by the propaganda, similar to what we just showed as an example? How would you address those worries and fears and concerns? And there's got to be some common ground here.
There is. And when I knock on a door and I can look at the voter data and see whether they're what we call a blank voter, which is somebody who's registered to vote but not registered as either a Democrat or a Republican. We talk to a lot of Republicans. We talk in this district, perhaps more so than in other districts, we have mixed households where one person is a Democrat and the other person is a Republican. So when you knock on the door and you don't know what you're going to get, I try and ask what's important to you this election, and that gets the person talking. Now, we do tend to be an older district, a lot of retirees, so I talk about Social Security. Did you know that part of the MAGA plan, Project 2025, is to roll back 20% of that check, and to roll back on what's covered by Medicare, and to not even enact those caps on prescription drug prices that Joe Biden has implemented. So those are supposed to kick in January 2025. And if Trump gets elected, they're saying, no, they're just not going to bother. They're not going to do that.
Right.
So talk about what's important. Veterans. There are a lot of veterans in our district because we have a big military base. We are a border state, and our district is on the border. So do the veterans know that part of Project 2025 is to pull 10,000 healthcare workers from the VA system? Now, I don't know about you, but when I've talked to vets, they talk about, a visit to the VA is an all-day thing.
It's horrible.
So what's going to happen if we pull back 10,000 jobs?
I can't even imagine.
They're also going to make it more difficult for somebody who has PTSD or some other kind of disability to get disability coverage. They're going to make it so you can't get disability coverage and regular pension. That will be financially devastating. Other things, there was a recent bill that In committee, it was contemplated that the active duty enlisted men and women would get a 19.5% pay increase, plus child care stipend, plus housing stipend if that was appropriate, and a lot of military families live off base. By the time it was approved in the committee, but by the time it actually went to the floor, they had cut way back on that 19.5% pay increase, down to 4% pay increase for enlisted. That's a huge amount because, as you know, our enlisted men and women are in many cases living on government assistance through SNAP and WIC and what have you. And no mention of child care benefits or housing stipend. But we're going to buy more equipment for the military.
Right.
And I'm not begrudging. I think our military does need state-of-the-art equipment. But I would also consider that human resources need to be bolstered and supported and to keep up. You know, we've had inflation. We keep up with the times.
Well, we have to take care of people first, right?
Take care of people.
Right. So a good leader, in my mind, addresses issues with no personal agenda, which I'm sure is difficult to some degree. Takes a lot of self-reflection, self-checking. It's morally sound, right? Make good moral decisions for not just, yourself, but for the people that you're serving. And can problem solve while respecting human rights. So I think my question is, do you believe that both can happen simultaneously? Can you solve problems simultaneously, promote human rights, or not even promote human rights, but not take them away, which seems to be like this thing with the MAGA party and with like Stefanik followers and voters.
Right. So the MAGA thing, the MAGA approach seems to be to make one group right and everybody else wrong. And I go back to Michelle Obama's convention speech where she talked about, we're all happy right now. We're elated. We have this joy in the party. But in the coming weeks and in the run-up to the election, somebody's going to make a mistake. And let's talk about it. Let's not jump all over each other. Let's allow people to be human. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the notable difference in our party as opposed to the MAGAs. We're not going to be the group, the small insular group that's in versus making everybody wrong. That's their thing. That's why immigration is such an easy target for them, because the people who are crossing the border for whatever reason are made into the other, which, by the way, if you look at Stefanik's family history, they're not exactly Native American. I mean, come on. They came over somehow, some way.
Right.
Just like most of the people who are living in the United States of America can trace back their heritage, whether it's to their grandparents, to their parents, their grandparents, or further up the family tree. But my point being, we're all Americans and we're all in it to have these discussions, not to make somebody else wrong or to make somebody else illegal.
Right, exactly. The fear-mongering is interesting to me.
It is.
And I think when people really look at data and facts, they see the truth as opposed to what's really kind of getting spoon-fed to them through the likes of these Facebook posts. And you told me an interesting story earlier, and without getting into the super details of it, it was a story related to a snippet of something that you said out of context. And that snippet was aired nationally. And then what proceeded was some Facebook bots, which are robots, not real people, not real profiles. And then real people followed those posts.
Right.
Followed suit. And that's scary to me, that we've become sheep following an unknown shepherd.
That's an interesting way to put it. So what our campaign experienced was that we had this bot invasion, and what I emphasize, as you said, the bots posted comments on Facebook, and if you're not aware, you can click on, if somebody posts something on Facebook, you can click on their name, and it'll tell you, their school, their family, usually their photos.
Right. Details.
If that information is not there, or if it's obviously fake, then you know this is an artificial profile, or a profile of somebody who really is not a human being. And so what we discovered was taking a remark very out of context, and the bots posted from about 5:30 p.m. one evening until 10 p.m. And then the humans started copying and taking what the bots were posting. Hatred, absolute hatred. But it didn't come organically. It's not like somebody decided, oh, I don't like Paula Collins. It was a bot posting information. And then the humans decided Paula Collins is, and fill in the blank as to what they had to say.
And pretty horrific.
Pretty horrific.
And you seem like a pretty, you've been around the block. You've heard, so you're not, it's not like, these virgin ears of yours. This was pretty horrific things that were being said.
Yeah. So
by the people.
By the humans, yeah.
Yeah, the bots were nicer.
The bots had some interesting things to say, but remember the bots were originally at some point programmed by the people.
Right.
But first of all, you could tell by the sheer numbers of responses that came flooding in that something was not right. And, I will say, a lot of the bots and the people didn't come from within New York 21. They came from Oregon or California or Washington State or Utah or from not in the country.
Interesting.
So, but somebody planned that.
Oh, absolutely.
Somebody set that up.
And I feel bad. I do feel bad for the people that follow that read that. They feel emotional attachment to the things they're reading without taking a pause, without, like you're saying, read, do your own research, be an independent learner and fact checker.
Well, I almost felt like some of it was FOMO. That if they saw all of these postings of filth and outrage directed at this kind of a nobody candidate in New York 21, a Democrat, then they wanted to chime in and be a part of this cheering mob. And yet the cheering mob was really a couple of computer scripts.
So interesting. And terrifying. So I want to express my gratitude for your willingness to step up into this as a candidate, because I personally can't even imagine, especially right now more than ever, the type of bravery, strength that it takes, especially since you're kind of putting yourself out there, and the ridicule that you can get, especially against the person that you're against. But I'd like to give you some time to express what you really want our listeners to hear about you, and why this election is so important on a local level.
So, thank you very much for that. And it is my deep honor to be the Democratic and Working Families Party candidate in this particular race. I say that this is a calling, not a campaign, in that when I'm a cannabis tax attorney. I was traveling around the North Country and looking around, and I said, who's the Congress? If I lived here, who's the congressperson?
Right.
And as I began to spend more time, I really wanted to know. And so somebody said, well, it's Elise Stefanik. And I said, oh, well, who's running against Elise? I need to support that person. And it came out, well, that's the thing, Paula. Nobody's running against Elise. Nobody has the courage to run against Elise. And I thought, my moral compass could not align with that. I could not let the kind of hatred, not only from Elise, but from the MAGAs, to go unchallenged. And so, by hook or by crook, this is a race in which I feel that I needed to drop everything and get involved. There are so many issues, but it comes down to really making life better. So when people reach out to the campaign, and it's on a current postcard, what do you want to see the North Country look like in 5 years? What do you want to see the North Country look like in 10 years? How about 50 years? What's going to be here in 50 years? Because if we go with one party, we're going to have no checks on climate change. or on what corporations could come through and do with our agricultural resources. We'll have big ag at work. If we destroy the EPA, like what is contemplated in Project 2025, we'll have massive, deforestation of our gorgeous Adirondack Mountains. We'll have pollution in our streams, pollution in our air. Trump likes to say, drill, baby, drill. I don't know that they would drill in New York, in the Adirondack Park, but if they think they can find something, they will. Mm-hmm. They would roll back the fracking rules that New York has put into place. So that's something that we really, if you care about the environment, you need to be very aware of this election. If you care about women's rights, what's contemplated is that we would go back to what was supposedly a traditional wife and homemaker role, although curiously, Elise Stefanik is not certainly fulfilling a traditional wife and homemaker role. She's not at home with her son 24/7 like one would think, and yet that's what the party is saying us as women should be doing. So what do you want the North Country to look like in 5 years? Do you want us to be on a trend where we are expanding universal broadband so that we can have the choice to work from home? Or really, how about this? Expand universal broadband so that if you get into an accident while you're out on a county road, you can call somebody. Because in a lot of places you can't. It's a safety issue.
Absolutely.
What do you want the North Country to look like in 10 years? Do you want a healthy SUNY system? Do you want a Department of Education at the federal level that supports our schools? Do you want a Department of Labor that is robust and protects unions and protects the right to organize? So this, what would seem like a faraway thing, sending a representative to Congress, really comes home when you realize, my decision on November 5th will influence what my community will look like in 5 years, in 10 years, in 50 years.
Yeah. And you mentioned it to me earlier in conversation, but no matter what happens November 5th, you're ready to wake up November 6th and continue this fight.
So here's the thing. In this race, there's one way to lose and 3 ways to win. One way to lose is that we say, you know what, Elise Stefanik has a heck of a lot of money, a whole lot of influence, and maybe what we need to do as voters is just turn all of our support to these other races in other congressional districts and just cede the territory to Elise Stefanik. That is one choice. We lose that way. We win, of course, if we get more than 50% of the vote. That's fairly easy math. The second way that we win, though, is that maybe we don't get up to that more than 50% level, but we get more than the Democrat has gotten before. And we kind of level the playing field and become more competitive. And maybe we don't turn New York 21 blue, but we certainly have the ability to turn it purple. So let's put New York 21 in play. That's the second way we win. The third way we win is that the midterm race begins November the 6th. So I liken this to building a business. You don't build a business from February to November and say, you know what, we put all of this effort, we've organized these people, we've got these volunteers here and these staffers there and these venues lined out and these press contacts lined out, and then within 6 months decide, that was a whole lot of work, we're done. No, let's take that infrastructure, let's build an institution that has knowledge and apply that November 6th and be ready for the midterms, because they will come. And by the way, we need to do that even if we win, because you better believe they're going to come after us if we win.
Oh, absolutely. And I am so humbled with you taking the time to be here. Little old me, I definitely was so excited that you agreed to come here, and I really hope that you all take Paula's information today and you share it with your friends, share it with your families. It is all up to us. As Paula has said, it is our campaign. It is our responsibility, and she needs our help getting her message out. And I hope to see you October 19th.
I'll be there.
Okay, and Paula has committed to being in Saranac Lake and in Plattsburgh. She's used to traveling. That's nothing for her. She's going to jump in a rocket ship. She's going to be in 2 places at once. But I am looking forward to seeing you there and hearing you speak again. And again, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.